Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Oyster Stew podcast. I'm Libby Hall, Director of Communications for Oyster Consulting. In today's episode, we're joined by Oyster Consulting experts Ralph Magee and Steve Kuhs, who bring their deep knowledge of CAT and CAIS reporting to the conversation. CAT compliance isn't just about submitting data. It's about building a robust surveillance program that monitors both errors and successful submissions. Ralph and Steve will walk you through what it takes to build an effective CAT compliance program, including the importance of clear documentation, comprehensive controls, and cross-departmental communication. They'll also address common gaps in oversight when relying on CAT reporting agents and why third-party reviews can provide critical expertise. Let's dive in. Ralph?
All right. Well, Steve, thanks again for joining me today. And we're going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of having a strong CAT reporting surveillance system. And I think for today's discussion, I want to make clear to our audience that, when we talk CAT, we're including things that you should also consider for CAIS as well, right? These all roll up under the CAT rules, though a lot of times you hear the industry separate CAT reporting versus CAIS reporting. They'll all roll up under the same rule here for discussion today. And one of the things, Steve, that I see out there and deal with our clients all the time is really the basics, right? It's having strong policies and procedures. And I think it's important for the audience to understand today that our approach here at Oyster is we have policy documents, written supervisory policies or procedures that are out there that are supported by strong desk procedures and then followed up with some compliance checklists. That's basically how we like to structure these reviews out there with our clients. Is that similar to your experience in the past?
Absolutely. The first thing that any regulator does when they come in to give you an examination is they ask for your procedures, right? So easy to get yourself tripped up when they're looking at those supervisory procedures to not even mention the rule, right? It's a new rule. A lot of times you've got to remind yourself to go back into those procedures to add these steps. And so it's very important that you're paying attention to incorporating these in your supervisory procedures and then having those good desk procedures and executing on what you say you do. It's just the most important thing at the start of an examination. And you can have the best data in the world and you could be doing perfect work. But if you don't have that documented so that they know that it's repeatable, then they're not going to give you credit for it.
Right. So those tasks are sort of outlined at a very high level in that WSP documentation. And then your desk procedures is where you'll find details about what you are specifically doing to accomplish all of those tasks that are written there, right? And then you can further add those compliance checklists there for accountability, right? That your ops group or your compliance group, wherever this may live within your organization, this holds those people accountable for what they should be doing and making sure all those tasks get done.
Yeah, in the supervisory procedures, you're really looking for, who owns this rule and who's surveilling the rule. That's what you want to be able to spell out. You want to demonstrate that the firm knows the rule exists, has a designated owner within the firm, and a designated supervisory structure supporting it. And that
Right.
and then you just, when you get to the desk level, that's where you really drill down into how you accomplish those tasks. But it is very important.
I think what we have observed with our clients is it's extremely important to have good controls in place because this is an ever-changing environment, right? Multi-year implementation, we've talked about that. There's some constant updates that need to go on. Some of those need to flow through to these documents that we're talking about. There's new exemptions that are out there, ever-changing in that regulatory environment. And then you have things that you find out along the way on certain documents, such as looking at what the FINRA priorities are on their exams, the recent findings that you were seeing that are published out there, some fines that may have been imposed on some industry members. So there's learning from that goes on a constant basis. And those controls point you back to make those updates.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And it's important to remember, this is a new rule, and the industry as a whole and the regulators were working on just getting the data in. So your CRAs and your BDs, your OMSs, they wanted to get the data to FINRA in good form and get it in there. Just do the CAT reporting. But the rule's now final and the rule's out. And so that's an accepted assumption should be being done. And so we've now moved to the point where, okay, you're doing the reporting, but where are your controls? What are you doing with that data? What kind of supervision are you doing to it? It's not just good enough to say, well, I'm reporting, so I'm done. You've got to be monitoring those exceptions. You've got to be chasing those down, and you have to be doing a systematic review of your correct reports to make sure that the data you're sending in makes logical sense to your firm.
Right. Yeah. Very, very important point. And we want to do this on a pre-FINRA examination basis rather than a post-examination where they have cited you for some finding or some shortcoming that may exist in your current procedures and obviously your compliance system as a whole. So very, very important for firms to concentrate on their policies and procedures there. I think another important aspect of it is really how do you report to CAT and to CAIS, right? So your reporting structure is essential. Most of the industry uses some form of CAT reporting agent to report their data to CAT. I think it's important for us to talk a little bit about the risk that's associated with that. What are your feelings on that, Steve?
Well, not only do you see firms having one CRA, you see them having multiple CRAs, right? And having them work together. So the risks there are the handoff of the data, and to make sure that you're actually capturing all the events in the life cycle of the trade while it's under your firm's control. And that's where you really have to interrogate your CRAs and have a way to consolidate that information. If you are using, a back office provider, maybe you're using an OMS. What I've seen and what we've seen is, introducing broker dealers are leaning on their clearing firms to be their experts, their subject matter experts, and handle their information. And the regulators don't see it like that. The responsibility really lies with that introducing broker dealer to be monitoring this information. And that clearing firm, as your CRA, is going to meet their level of requirement in their agreement. And if you look at that agreement, it says, I'm going to give you reports in a timely fashion, and I'm going to beat the deadlines. It doesn't say anything about helping you with exceptions, error creation, or surveillance. And right. So that really is something that falls back on the introducing broker-dealer, the firm itself.
Yeah. And it's something that third party that's acting as your CRA, how trustworthy are they in doing their own due diligence on themselves, right? So that there's a conflict of interest there in some degree, or maybe firms should take it under their own wing, right, to think about doing that due diligence or regular due diligence on that reporting, or have a third party look into doing that due diligence for them.
Yeah, listen, we have real life experience in these areas where doing a review of your CAT activity over a time frame, say it's a week, doing a surveillance of all of your entries and looking at it for soundness, has caught deficiencies in some of the CRAs that our clients are using. And it's simple things that are easy to detect when you look at it at scale, but not easy to detect when you look at a day-to-day event or you're just managing exceptions. Something like, hey, account types. I looked at my events for a week and I don't have any inventory accounts ever being reported. Well, that's never going to be an error, but you know that you have inventory accounts and you should have reported some. Sure. And that's something that you could catch when you do a surveillance run of your own on your data.
Yep, great point. And you also have a complication when you throw in different trading systems, OMSs, and back office systems, right, that are required to report the account and customer information. to CAIS. So there are times where you have these multi-system dependencies that you need to be reviewed and analyzed, especially for consistency, right? Does one aspect of this system, is it dependent on information from another system? What kinds of things have you seen out there in terms of those types of conflicts?
Firms that are using OMS to report some of their activity as well as their back office system, we have seen those get out of sync with each other, especially in the FDID space. And you're going to find yourself potentially reporting a trade from one system that can't find its way back to a good FDID. And that's going to start throwing you errors and warnings that you've then got to address. Ralph, I think you've had some specific experience with that.
We have. We definitely have. And that reconciliation process can definitely get broken. And you'll have some orphaned FDIDs, if you will, right, that are out there that you can't tie back to the source or to a particular order flow within a firm. So it can happen, and definitely something that may not immediately error, right, in FINRA's validation of the reporting, but through a separate analysis that can be done on those FDIDs, you can find that pretty quickly. I think the other thing too is just you touched on subject matter expertise or experience, right? To me, CAT and CAIS, it lives in multiple departments across our clients. We have some clients where where trading owns this, and others where compliance owns this, others where it's in operations, or maybe a combination of all three of those and include some IT folks that are involved in this, right? Depending on the structure of how they report, if they're self-reporting or they use a CAT reporting agent. That really is a challenge, I think, for most of our clients, because I would say that by far, with the ones that I work with, it lives in multiple places. It's not owned by a singular department of a firm, of one of our clients, right? So communication becomes really important.
Absolutely. And you with CAIS, you left out the fact that some of this is now in like a new accounts group.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that's a team that has never had a reporting requirement in their history of the industry, right? Now all of a sudden you're reporting a case like a trade reporting, which is second nature to somebody who's a trade reporting role. They've been reporting to Trace or MSRB or Oates their entire lives. So reporting a trade makes sense to them. Reporting a new account to somebody is a brand new feature for those departments, and then having to manage an exception report and the possible errors and fixes that come along with that. It's a very new thing.
Yeah, and we're talking about expertise or subject matter expertise that's scarce still, right? In the younger stage of this regulation, right? There still aren't a lot of people out there that have experience in understand the importance of each one of those departments and where each one can add benefit to the overall surveillance of the reporting itself for both CAT and CAIS. I think we've seen the use of working groups, and I know that I have. Is that something that you all used to use within your previous employer, or are you a fan of those, or do you like another approach?
No, I'm a huge fan of finding peer firms like yourself and getting together and being collaborative. I don't think that we could have successfully launched this at my previous firm if we didn't have the cooperation of similar sized regional broker dealers. You're facing the same problems. This isn't a market advantage where you need to try to beat your competitor, right? You're just trying to be compliant with a rule. And so helping each other out, more brains, makes it easier. Plus, you're able to then use that power or leverage to make change to the rule where you see there's needed. So SIFMA and FIS were great advocacy groups through the creation of the rule.
Yeah. Well, I think using those peer groups together and learning from the overall experience of that group and making changes and being quick and nimble, right, is one of the things that I think has made us successful, made our clients successful. Utilizing software, right? The efficiencies that brings you so that you can ensure timely, accurate, and complete reporting to both CAT and CAIS. We touched on this, but I don't see a lot of the large scale CAT reporting agents like a clearing firm offering a lot of dashboards or compliance and surveillance tools that would adequately surveil CAT and CAIS as we've been instructed per the guidance that we have out there.
I haven't seen it, so I didn't see it in my time in the industry. Well, what I experienced was, here's a list of your events. Good luck. I felt that as a self-clearing firm, and I felt that as an introducing broker-dealer. And then since my time as a consultant, I've gotten to see more clients and more clearing firms, and I have not seen anybody providing a tool that does a good job of giving the firms the ability to surveil their events. They basically just give them a readout of what happens, and a lot of times it's in a format that isn't easy to manipulate. It's in a machine readable report format. So it's coming at you in text, and you've got to get your IT department to create some sort of way to ingest that in a manipulatable form.
Yep. So that brings in, firms like us, third parties, right, that can come in and really give you a lot of benefit for the cost, right? So, there's some value that can be that can be used there from the firm to get that fresh set of eyes looking at some of the data, both on the CAT and on the CAIS reporting that the firm is creating, or having another firm create that on their behalf. Communication, again, is key. I feel like, getting that communication structure, no matter how you report, no matter how many departments are involved in the CAT and CAIS surveillance and compliance, it's just essential to make sure that structure is set up correctly. And then finding firms also that can provide training, not only training internally as to what tasks should be performed on a daily basis, monthly basis, periodic basis, right? Ongoing surveillance of both CAT and CAIS, but training is sometimes needed. Just knowing how to use the tools that are out there, not only from your clearing firm but also from the industry itself.
Yeah, if I could circle back to your point about subject matter expertise within firms, you just have to remember this is a new rule. And so this rule hasn't been in existence for 30 years, and you haven't had multiple industry veterans have touched this rule. You can't look at your firm and say, we've got 4 people who have at one point in their career had an exposure to this rule and passed down that information to the next group, who then passed down it to the next. This is a situation where somebody could leave your firm and you're going to lose all the knowledge you have about CAT for that firm, and you're going to have to replace that individual. And that's where a firm like ourselves, consultants who have done this across multiple venues, across multiple reporters, are able to quickly and efficiently help train up staff so they can get that benefit of the industry veteran who's seen this rule and all that comes with it.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that makes us unique across all of our competition is that most of us come from places like you, Steve, right? They come from sitting in that role at a broker-dealer, performing these tasks that we're talking about. They have that firsthand experience. We are not a firm of career consultants that graduated college and went right into the consulting business, right? So we've all sat there in those seats. We've done these tasks. We know what management needs from the folks that are performing these tasks in order to successfully supervise that, right? I think where we've seen recent success, and I think where we'll see even more success going forward with our clients, is really talking about how do we continuously surveil CAT and CAIS? I've seen huge benefits where we've been able to go in on a semi-annual basis, let's say, and do a sampling of a firm's CAIS and CAT reporting. Having that third-party perspective to come in with, good consulting experience that we've built over the last couple of years, in combination with having a software efficiency platform that we can utilize, that our consultants can utilize to put a fresh set of eyes on the reporting and really produce some unbiased results that firms can take away. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, the last, I agree with everything you said. And the other thing I'd say is we could do it at scale. So a human being can only look at so many reports. And what you really need to do is you need to look at your successful reports and not just your exceptions in a trade reporting scenario nowadays. And when you're looking at your successful reports, there's just so many. There's so many MINOs. There's so many MEORs. The volume of legs that go on for a trade in its life cycle are huge. And to be able to ingest all that information and then spit out reports and review and surveillance that is useful and targeted towards the priorities of the regulators is invaluable. And that's something that we can do and we've had success doing.
Right. The reporting may be perfect, right? And it may be flawed,
But then you have that artifact that said, I surveilled my reports. I've checked that box. Right. And you can put that aside and know that when they come in, this is going to be one of the things that they might not even decide to examine you on. Right.
And if you haven't done it, you don't have that story to tell, right? You don't have that artifact. You don't have, hey, did I do enough to be reasonable, right? Is a word that's thrown around out there in the industry. Access to software, compliance reports, and expertise that you might not have internal or may not have access to otherwise through your providers, through your CAT reporting agents. That's where firms like us can come in and use the expertise, use the software, use these reports that we know have been successful with management within our firms as well is extremely important. You need to be ready to demonstrate what you are doing here because you're going to be asked, right? Here's your policies, your procedures. I think one of the big things that our clients have given us positive feedback on is source files. Really comparing the source file that's generated by whatever the provider it is and compare that to the output that goes out the door to CAT and to CAIS, because it becomes very valuable.
Yeah, that is the final hurdle when you get to that state to really have confidence that your successful reports are correct. Right? A successful report is just one that doesn't trip a known FINRA error. But right. if you're making a report and saying something is an inventory account when it's actually an error account, when you compare that to a source file check, I now know what my error accounts are, and I can see if that report reported correctly. That's just one data point we could look at, but it happens over and over across the whole litany of reports you make in a MINO and a MEOR. And that source file data is how you have that confidence that what you submitted, well, not a FINRA error, is also not a firm error.
Yeah. And if you go back to early guidance, even, notice the members 20-31, right? You see where the expectation is that firms are completing that type of, source file analysis that's out there. That's been something that they've been very adamant about from the very beginning and from some of the very early alerts that they put out to give the industry some guidance. And reporting that back to upper management, right? So they understand exactly what's going on within the firm is key as well. I think that we've had a bunch of great discussion here about the things that I think firms need to be doing, things that we're guiding our clients to do on a regular basis. we talked a little bit about that reasonable. What is reasonable? We are finding that in general guidance, we're trying to say that, if firms are out there and they're looking at a week's worth of trading, regardless of their volume, if they're doing that type of deep dive and analysis on a week's worth of trading every 6 months, that would be something for most firms that would be considered reasonable. Now, that can vary, right? I'm sure you would agree, Steve, if a firm's only reporting, 50 events to CAT and maybe 4 customers a day, right? It's a different environment, right? There may be some other surveillance programs that you could put into play, but if you're doing, normal regional kind of broker dealer volume that may be, 100,000 events a day to CAT, it seems reasonable if you're at least deep diving into that 1 week's worth of data every 6 months on an ongoing basis. Any thoughts there on reasonability?
Absolutely. I think that fits. You look at that in a time frame of semi-annually, and one thing that you got to think when we're creating a surveillance structure that upper management can feel confident in. A lot of times the people who are doing the day-to-day tasks of the review are not licensed individuals per se. And so the person who's ultimately responsible for it, that chief compliance officer, right? That 24 who sits over the trading groups, they need to have some way of having the confidence that the work that's being done under them is reasonable and correct. And these kind of surveillance techniques are the things that can give them that confidence, because at the end of the day, they probably are the ones that own it, even though they aren't the ones that are touching it.
Exactly. Well, I think we've talked on a lot of great points today. I appreciate you joining me for this discussion, and encourage our listeners out there to reach out to us and let us help you more, and develop that really strong CAT and CAIS surveillance program that your firm probably needs.
Thank you, Ralph.
If you found today's discussion helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more episodes where we dive into industry strategies and best practices. For more information about our experts and our services, visit our website at oysterllc.com. Thanks for listening.